then there is what we call, uncovering our wild self, right? And so everybody has this repressed part of themselves. I like to think of my wild self as being that little kid that plays in the dirt and climbs trees and eats worms. But we've tucked that part of ourselves away. And we really only, and you know that you have it. When you look at a mountain and there's a sense of awe and wonder, or when you look up at a tree and you feel that tingle that goes up your spine, right? And it kind of sits at the back of your skull. That's your wild self. That's your wild self. It's reacting, right? It remembers. And so part of the rewilding journey is to have that wild self become part of the forefront. It's really resetting the prefrontal cortex.
Welcome to the Uncaged Mindset Podcast, where we talk all things spiritual awakening and interview the light workers and healers who are out there radiating their light. But before we get to our very special guest today, please take a second and smash that subscribe button and hit that like button, please. We are building a community of light and everyone is invited. Okay, I am so excited to reintroduce our very special guest today. Absolutely one of my most favorite things to talk about. That is grounding and connecting with nature. Okay. Our guest today is a certified sound therapist, a meditation healer, specializing in elemental meditation practice and personal rewilding. Here to discuss the benefits of connecting with nature and unpacking this powerful concept known as rewilding, the author actually returning to the podcast, we've got the author of Rekindling Your Relationship with Nature and the founder of Robert Hensley Nature Reconnect.com, the very awesome, my friend, Robert Hensley.
Hey, how are you?
I'm so good right now. I'm good. I'm good to be in your presence always. So the answer hasn't changed. I feel very grounded already. How
good? Good. Maybe less grounded than I should be.
Well, you do so much. You're doing so much, Robert. And every time I meet up with you or get an update on you, you're just offering more of yourself to the world, more of yourself to your clients, and more ways to ground. More methods of grounding and getting connected to nature. I always leave learning something new, and I'm so excited today to really dive into this concept known as rewilding. The first time I ever heard the term was when we went to lunch a couple of months ago. I had not heard of rewilding, and since then you have been expanding it, creating what I think might be a curriculum for it, a 5-day challenge, I think, as well, that I really want to ask more about. But before we get into that, Robert, for people who don't know you, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about your journey, how did, meditation, getting grounded, healing work, find itself into your life, or how did you find it?
Okay, so so as you know, I am an Emmy-nominated makeup artist. I've worked in the entertainment industry for almost 3 decades. And a couple of years ago, I suffered a hand injury. And we weren't really sure if that was going to hinder my career or not. And I found myself in a really dark place, the thought of losing the one thing that you kind of knew that you had. And so a friend of mine suggested meditation for pain, and I started there. And then I started looking at other meditation classes, and, as things go, and especially for me, because I fall into rabbit holes all the time. So I started with meditation for pain, and then went into sound therapy, and I found this great class that I really enjoyed. And so I decided that I wanted to be a certified sound therapist, and I was going to buy orchestra bowls, and I was going to travel the countryside and, ring my bowls for whomever would listen. And And then that led to becoming a certified meditation leader. And that led to elemental meditation. And I kind of stopped at that point. I really wanted to kind of build upon this. And so I started making kind of inroads to teach meditation classes and work with different wellness centers. And that was great. And then I kind of encountered a little bit of imposter syndrome, we can say, because with elemental meditation, it's about honoring your connection to the natural world. And being someone who lives in Los Angeles and has lived here for 20 years or more, we don't. It's kind of hard to have a connection to the natural world when you live in a cityscape. And so I think a bit of the imposter syndrome kind of came about was, how do you honor a connection to the natural world if you don't have a connection to the natural world? And so I took some time off and I disappeared and I went into the woods and I found rewilding, which is a concept that's based on ego psychology and ecotherapy. And it's really about, we hear it a lot with when we're talking about the conservation of space or the conservation of land. So if an area has been overdeveloped or over planted, overutilized, they'll often allow that area to become rewilded, so the land goes back to nature. And we can do that with ourselves, allowing ourselves to reconnect to that inherent connection that we have to the natural world, right? Because genetically, ancestrally, we've always been meant to have a connection to nature and just been kind of unconditioned of that. So organically, kind of the one thing rolled into another until I, decided that my mission was going to be to help other people find ways of connecting or reconnecting to nature, to the natural world, and using the tools that I used, which is, nature immersion, meditation, journaling. And so, yeah, that's how it happened.
Wow. It's amazing, like kind of going off the grid a little bit, and I'm hearing like this theme of like loss, loss of identity in a way. And so many people who have, either gone through their own awakenings or find themselves looking for reconnection again and groundingness have either gone through some like life change where the work that they do either creatively or, in any profession is now altered by being a little less than that identity in some way that we conceptualize in our mind. I'm a little less than if I don't have, if I can't run as fast as I used to anymore. I'm a little less than if I don't speak the way that I used to, or my brain isn't working the way that I used to anymore. And for you, your hands being so much of your like life force and so much of, and Robert, but also now you're using your hands to heal. And to heal others. And one thing I did want to ask you about, and by the way, thank you so much for sharing that, because it's very courageous to share that, and as your path in getting reconnected and helping others to do the same. You've been through it. It's like, what I think about it as there are wonderful teachers out there of all kinds, but I find sometimes like the best ones are the ones who've been through it themselves. It's like I'm able to somehow go deeper into my shadows because my mentor, they did the damn thing. They did the damn thing. And I did want to ask you, so when you were, I think you mentioned this to me before in passing or in private, but while you were going through this transition and kind of healing, and were you also like healing other actors in the industry and people in the industry as well, and kind of guiding them through meditation?
I was, it's when you're in the industry, and especially when you're, how do I say this? I guess the thing that most people may not realize is that when you're part of what we call the vanities, hair, makeup, wardrobe, you work very intimately with the actors. Your job in helping them build the character, right, is about how the character looks and how the actor feels. And so you're working very closely with the director to help the actor find that path, find that place. And so, yeah, like hair and makeup, the trailer, whatever, the hair and makeup room, wherever you might be, is often treated kind of like it's a sacred space. It's a place where if an actor is not feeling something, or something didn't go well, or, when they're in between a scene or they really need to dig deep and get to something, you see that and feel that, and they bring that to you in that space. And after I had started doing elemental meditation, and not just, elemental meditation being kind of this grand concept, but, it's easy to have an actor and see that they're agitated and ask them, would you like to breathe? Would you like to breathe together? And so by calming them and getting them into that space, you're taking away that negative energy, that tension, and then you can work on them. They can feel better about themselves, and they can connect and find what it is that they need to find to move on. So I've taken that onto sets with me. It's not something that I don't advertise to the production. Like, by the way, I might be meditating with our actors. I wouldn't mind that if that came about, where someone called and said, listen, we need some meditation help on this set. But that, and just, knowing people and being attached to or connected to people who are in the industry. Yeah, some of the people who I've coached and stuff are actors.
Yeah, that's so powerful, Robert. And I actually got hit with a lot of emotion right now. Like the moment you ask that actor, in the room, would you like to breathe? There's something so profound and powerful about that. Kind of stops the record for a little bit that we're all spinning on. And it almost feels uncomfortable. Like, no. Like, I'm not supposed to, like, you're asking me to do? Like, I need to be on that hamster wheel right now. I'm not allowed to stop. And giving people that permission to just breathe. And first of all, I'm sure that you meet a lot of people who don't know how to breathe. It's like, okay, well, what do you mean breathe? I'm breathing right now. But it is a new way of being, which in a lot of ways it shouldn't be new. It's kind of like you're recalibrating back to your body's natural state of being, in a way.
Right. Well, you're reconnecting with a rhythm and cycle of the natural world, which is what we are disconditioned or deconditioned to do. So it's really important, and it's something that is incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
Incredibly valuable. Why did I break that up into 2 words?
Because it's that important. It's that valuable. So, Robert,
it is that important.
Yeah, it is that important. So going back to rewilding, or now that you're on this, so my understanding, as you mentioned, is as buildings that have been built over the earth, have been industrialized in a way, and like this connection to the natural world, when it's not within your view, it's possible to still connect with it, and this is a pathway to that.
Yeah, I think that for a lot of people, when they hear about personal rewilding, or when we talk about finding or uncovering our wild self, they think that this is, some weird, cult thing where everybody gets naked and swings off a vine. And you can if you want to, but it's more about having or rediscovering that kind of historical, that genetic, that inherent connection, which goes beyond just being outside. And it's something that doesn't necessarily require you to spend time outside. Does it help? Absolutely. but you can rewild being in a cityscape, sitting in your apartment.
Wow. Just having the option that that's a possibility to do, I think will expand people's minds a bit about what they think, because people can be limited saying, well, I don't live where you live.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a nature trail that I can go on. I can't, I mean, yeah, I do some meditation, but it's not the same thing, as being in nature. Or you're so lucky that you get to live by the beach. You're so these things that, like, this nature is somehow outside of them, which I mean, how do you get someone? I guess I'm now diving into kind of if you can share a little bit about your how you work with clients,
Yeah.
what this looks like in practice, this rewilding for someone maybe at a beginner level.
Okay, so at a beginner level, I mean, I think that before you kind of go into any, and I know for me, when I started with meditation, I was, and I'm a fairly, it might not seem it, but I'm a very introverted person. I don't, I have a hard time with groups of people. I have a hard time being seen, and I was not confident with the idea of going into a meditation class. And I think that when you find the tips, the tricks, the techniques to learn how to meditate and be confident that you know your practice, that taking that then into a group or into a class kind of setting with other people is much easier. So so that's kind of the first place to start. Then there is what we call, uncovering our wild self, right? And so everybody has this repressed part of themselves, right? It's their nature aware being. And again, we've become so um, desensitized to nature. We've been taught that nature is this thing that we have to conquer and control and abuse. Um, that we've taken. I like to think of my wild self as being that little kid that plays in the dirt and climbs trees and eats worms. But we've tucked that part of ourselves away, and we really only. And you know that you have it when you look at a mountain and there's a sense of awe and wonder, or when you look up at a tree and you feel that tingle that goes up your spine, right? And it kind of sits at the back of your skull. That's your wild self. That's your wild self. It's reacting, right? It remembers. And so part of the rewilding journey is to have that wild self become part of the forefront. It's really resetting the prefrontal cortex in your brain. But it's having that come to the forefront so that you're always thinking about or always responding to the world from a place that is natural, right? And then the other part of rewilding is really just accepting or recognizing and accepting that the entire world, right? Every being, and that's not every human being, that's every being as in plant beings, rock beings, you know, every being on the planet is connected. We're all made of the same four elements, just in different combinations, right? And so once you realize that there's no difference between you and that tree, you and that rock, you and that squirrel, it's really difficult to feel that you are above anything because we're not above the planet. We're not living on it. We're supposed to be living in it, right? And that's where that conditioning comes from, because we're taught that we wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, we take a shower, we drink a cup of coffee, we drive to work, we spend 8 hours in an office or 8 hours down a mine or 8 hours working for the man. And then we go home, eat dinner, you know, love on our kids or spouse or whatever, go to bed, and then repeat that every day for 5 days a week, and then squeeze everything else into 2 days and then start all over. The nature does not work on that clock, right? Nature does not work on that. We were never meant to have this industrialized, globalized uh, condition. It's completely counterproductive, right? So when we hear about countries who are like, testing the theory of a 4-day work week and having tremendous results, and then everybody here in the United States is like, how does that work? Like, because we've been taught that instead of being connected to nature, right, and to think about the well-being of all things, we've been conditioned to think about technology, to think about growing our own personal wealth, to having the next thing, to beating the Joneses, to and the thing about it is we've been conditioned to try this, to fight for this thing that is completely unattainable, right? Because how many people work in a workforce trying to get to a management level who never make it there? They die being a grunt, right? And if you're in management, you just want to get to, like, the executive offices, and you never make it, right? Because the people who are in power are going to stay in power, and they're not going to promote you to power. They're going to find somebody else that's already from a position of power to take their place, right? Because that's how this works. And so if we look at what we've been conditioned, right, is to take something that is shaped like this and follow something that's shaped like this, right? So we've been taught, right, that we forego stability and that we work towards something that could topple over at any minute, right? It's why corporations crash when there's a strike. It's why the workers have all the power, right? They don't think that they do, but they do. So rewilding is really about just understanding that we need balance, right? We need less of this and more of this, and that we should be working on something that's kind of like this, right?
Wow, Robert, there's this beautiful element with, like, from this progression of, and by the way, beautifully put, and I'm not even going to try to to say it as eloquently as you have here, but from going from, like, discovering our wild selves, like our wild selves, to then understanding that in this balance, unlearning that this thing that is not always accessible to you actually is always accessible to you.
Always.
As we are connected to it, and always have been. To this other piece, Robert, that I have not ever found in any other meditation practice or grounding practice, which is, I don't know quite how to articulate it, but there is like it's in a way acknowledging your presence and the role that you play in this power structure of the world, and that you are in it, and the part that you play is important. And it doesn't feel like political. It doesn't feel, but it does feel like it matters. It feels like there's a balance in how you are showing up into this world, and how and where are you deficient in the power that is yours. It's a really interesting conversation, and I feel like that always comes up. And when we're having these conversations about our connection to nature, it's like we can't almost can't discuss it in your progression of how the more connected you get with it, the more you start to understand that it's almost, again, breaking free from the matrix in a way.
And the thing about it is that we talk about this all the time, especially in this kind of world of personal transformation. We talk about mindfulness, and we never actually get to the crux of the matter, which is mindfulness is about being present and living in balance. And that's what it's about. It's not about, it's not really about the power. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are people who have rewilded and gone completely to the side of eco-terrorism. and that's fine. That's absolutely fantastic, and I love it, and I love that And I love that activism is born out of this. But at the same time, it's really just being mindful. It's what everyone is trying to do. It's just that to be mindful in and of itself in a bubble doesn't fix anything. It doesn't change anything. You know, you can be a terrible person and be completely mindful. You can be a great person, a kind person, and be completely mindful. But nothing's going to change because you're doing it in this insular, tiny little space, and you're not thinking about how the rest of the world, everything else, is connected to that. Right? You're still coming from a place of I'm above all of this.
Oh my God!
That doesn't work.
It's
I'll say this: it doesn't work for me. I don't want to sound judgy, but it does. I mean, it's just kind of like some of the pitfalls that we see or that people. Because I think that was one of the other things for me too, was that when you start meditation, when you start on this path, this journey, you do find that as you're learning certain things, that you get to a point where you're kind of like, well, that just kind of, it sounds like it just stops. Like, what's the progression beyond that? You know what I mean? Like, if the goal is to live this truly balanced, enlightened life, how do I get from here to there? So someone's taught me up to here, but how do I, like, what's the, and the next step is understanding the role that you play in the big picture. And I feel like that's what Rewilding gave me. It was that answer where I was kind of like, okay, elemental meditation takes me this far, but how do I get to that place, you know, where you start looking at and understanding what this means as a whole? And that's what it provided.
Robert, that's amazing. And yeah, because it can't be contained, you know, in just, you know, healing is an ongoing energy. And once that energy moves you, it moves, and it's got to go somewhere. And it doesn't end because the clock is stopped in the meditation room, or or the healing session has ended. And now but you still have to take yourself back out into the world in which you exist, that you were part of before you came into that healing session room, that you will be during and after. And it all matters. But I will say this: you, Robert, and I know you, and you are equipped to, you are equipped and experienced enough, and just have lived it enough to be able to manage these conversations, these dialoguings, that kind of that kind of merge with the meditation practice and all of it, that help to guide. I'm not sure that all healers, and again, not everyone is meant to do the same thing or to have the same healing path, but I'm not sure that all are equipped to have like the next step of the information and then the next because look, I'm just gonna say it, Robert. I was like, you are saying what I've been thinking. Like, literally been having these private conversations with my friends. Like, well, then what's next? What's next after that? I had a great healing experience, and I can keep on repeating that healing experience and attending the sessions that I go to, which are lovely. But but what's next? What's after that? And
if I can say this very quickly, is that what's next, and the way that some people, maybe not everyone needs to feel this way, but I think that when people start to look at light and kindness and healing as not a solution, but as a symptom, right? Because it's a symptom of enlightenment. Like, if you go out and you spread it, right? If you spread that disease, you spread that symptom, give it to other people, eventually a group of people together then will heal, and you'll enlighten an entire group of people. Then you're healing not just yourself, but a whole segment of the world, right? And when enough groups, when enough large organizations of people, communities, start to reach, for enlightenment, then that's when the world changes. That's when the world changes. There was a great documentary a couple of years ago called "Kindness is Contagious," and it's literally based on this concept that a person when a person is the recipient of a good deed, they themselves then become the next person to do a good deed. Like, it's just inherent that we pass it on. It's a very natural thing. And, if everyone were to, again, be mindful and watch that progression and be a part of that progression, who's to say that we can't change the world?
Absolutely. And and however it finds you at any point in your life is the right time. I co-host and I'm going to plug this. I co-host another podcast which is called the Voice for the Children podcast. And with an angel channeler that I've worked with, who's also been on the Uncaged Mindset podcast before, named Terry Allen. And we interview teenagers. We interview kids, and the premise is about their school system. And a lot of them share about their school experience or education experience. If they could build a school of their own, what would it be like? And they're learning mindfulness in their schools right now. And so where they're going to these particular schools, which are not everywhere, we want there to be, but they are learning mindfulness tools, learning how to identify their feelings, to talk about and share their feelings, and what to do by listening to their body. And they're also, some of these schools are literally built in nature too. So, and these students, some of them are now have come from the homeschool system. They've been in the public school setting, and this is what they want for the world. They feel like this is the answer to the world. Social media comes up. We never influence them either way to have any perspective on social media or any of that. But from their mouths, they will say, like, they either limit it completely, or they encourage their friends to not be scrolling, all day long, because they also understand vibration. Because this is stuff is being taught in schools. In a way, shouldn't have to be the separate metaphysical thing, the separate thing that's only reserved for people that are on a spiritual path. We're all connected, as you say, and it is true that. But how awesome is it that many adults are the ones who need it, because they're not. We all grew up in a lot of the same education systems where this was completely skipped over. We're finding that we're awakening, and a lot of us are not privileged to have that mentor that shows up in our life to tell us what's happening. And this is why you're questioning the Matrix, and this is why you're questioning that 9 to 5, and this is why you're questioning why you want to stop building their empire and maybe have dreams of your own. And so I think it's amazing.
I think we talked about this the last time we had lunch, is that, there's a 500% increase in the United States of interest in nature schools and schools with nature programs, because, again, we also talked about this, Tilda Swinton, one of our favorite actors, she created a nature school in the UK for her children, and then all of their friends kind of jumped in to this nature education curriculum. But but there is something to be said about finding mindfulness and rewilding and these kinds of concepts going into the schools, because, again, it is going to start with the children. Like, for us, to steal a term from the millennial set, the boomers, they've been living this kind of decommissioned existence, right? Their relationship or connection to nature has been so severed for so long that even if they were to find that connection now, not to say that they wouldn't and that it wouldn't be fantastic for them, but how much change is really going to come with that societally, right? So it does require us taking this information and feeding it to our children and giving them then this information, this power to take forward with themselves. So, yeah, very important.
Wow. I'm feeling, by the way, I this is not where I thought this this is going.
I mean, we can take it wherever you want.
but I feel like we've arrived exactly where we were supposed to be. Like
Yeah, probably.
exactly. No, this is a powerful. This is Robert. This is powerful language you're using. Very powerful language you're using. I have chills. If this is if anyone's listening to this and feeling a tiny, tiny, gentle, energetic nudge to take your power back in some way, or having accepted less power than you deserve, it's not taking anyone else's power; it's reclaiming your own. That is because you are possibly connecting to the source that you're a part of, and we weren't recording when we first logged on, but one of the things that you were talking about, Robert, was just like how nature doesn't have a clock, that there's no clock in time card with nature.
No, that's one of the, when we reconnect, when we rewild, is that one of the things that we try to do is to kind of reconnect specifically to the rhythms and cycles of nature. Like, we've become so accustomed to this idea of getting up at 5, shit, shower, shave, have a cup of coffee, get in the car, drive to work, spend 8 hours working for the man, drive home, throw some love to the kids and wife or husband, and go to bed and get up in the morning and do the same thing. Nature doesn't work like that, right? I mean, when we think about historically the way that our ancestors lived with the land, was that during the summer they were up with the sun, down with the sun, and they got the bulk of their work done in the light, right? And then in the wintertime, harvest was done, there was less to care for. That's when they were able to spend time on intellectual pursuits, right? And when we look at kind of just the wheel of the year, is that winter is kind of a time when we plan. Spring is the time that we plant the seeds, that we work on executing the plan. Summer is the time that we see that come to fruition. Autumn is the time that we reap the harvest, right? If you were to plan your career based on the wheel of the year, within 12 months, do you know what could happen? Do you know what could happen?
Everything.
Anything and everything, because you're working in this cycle. You're working with the planet. You're working with nature. You're in the mix. That's what we don't have. I mean, when I first started the elemental meditation thing and started the rewilding thing, for me, it was about the benefits that come with, nature immersion and meditation, which are, lower blood pressure and, lower anxiety and increased energy and decreased symptoms from ADHD and all of this stuff that comes with just being outside. Did you know that if you step outside and find the tallest tree that you can and stand at the bottom and look straight up through the branches for 1 minute, 1 minute is all it takes to reset the prefrontal cortex. And when you step away from the tree, you approach everything after that with more kindness and more generosity. That's all it takes, is 1 minute outside looking up at a tree. I mean, studies have shown that we don't get all the full benefits unless we spend 2 hours per week outside. That's 18 minutes per day. Like, if you work in the city and there's a green space that you can spend 18 minutes every lunch hour, right? You'll start receiving those benefits from being in nature. You know what I mean? You'll be able to go back to work and not feel stressed out. You won't be producing cortisol. You'll be, your blood pressure will be lower. You'll be able to attack your workflow with more energy and more focus. But, these are all things that we can do in such short amounts of time. Because that's the other thing too, right? Like, whenever anyone starts talking about meditation or a yoga class or, taking a mindfulness workshop, I don't have time. There's not enough time. Trust me. If you could spend 15 minutes per day doing a short meditation you could rewild in your own house without ever stepping foot outside. Right? I mean, you could, in that amount of time, you could find your inner wild self. You know what I mean? Like, and that's not to say that you don't wait until right before bed. You know, you've got that 15 minutes right before you fall asleep where you normally would be scrolling through your phone. Lay down the phone and rewild. Like, do something productive with that 15 minutes. Like, it's possible. It's so possible.
You're this is so powerful what you're talking about right now, Robert, but you're also speaking the language of the people, and you're speaking their language, and like words like being more productive, you've got time, only 8 minutes. You will be more productive by spending the time. You'll be surprised how productive you can be because right you're a lot just more connected.
Well, yeah. I mean, when we are feeling like we are part of this giant battery, which the planet kind of is, then yeah, I mean, there is, and we were talking about there's this abundance that is the world that we don't see. You know, we don't appreciate the fact that for, whatever we need, whatever we want, it's there. We just have to take it or ask for it. Like, we can't, what do they say? The answer is always no unless we ask, right? And so part of that is, if you're connected to the world, you know that what you want is there. When you're living in connection, when you're in tune to the rhythms and cycles, you know what's there. You know what's possible. You don't have to worry about taking a risk and failing because every risk is going to be a success.
I love that, Robert. Every risk is going to be, it's just like, yeah, like all the knowing that you need to know is already known and you can know it and just know that you can be still and just access it now because you are connected to the known. And that just releases all that anxiety, all the fear, all the worry on this, on this plane. It's a lot of negative learning happens in this dimension on this planet. A lot of negative learning. Just my mentor was just talking about that. It's like, how can we lift the judgment a little bit? How can we lift the fear a little bit? Just kind of and create our abundance now, which is right now. And I love that. Find a tall tree and look up. If you can't find a tall tree, well, that's your homework.
Well, listen, I mean, there was also a study that was done that showed that, and I loved this because when I was reading about it, the scene that popped into my head was that scene in Clockwork Orange where they hold his eyes open and they bombard him with, right? Because so that's what they basically did is they showed these people these horrible, horrible stress-inducing films. And then for part of the group, they showed them cityscapes. And the other part of the group, they showed nature scenes, just beautiful nature views. And the side that saw the nature scenes were able to calm down faster, show less signs of stress, and then answer a series of questions more succinctly than the group that saw the cityscape, right? The cityscape group was still stressed out. They were still tense. They weren't focused in the questions. So, yeah, I mean, so even if it just means buying yourself a digital picture frame and filling it with artwork, a beautiful nature scene so that you can sit it on your desk and have that to look at for 19 minutes. That's all this group in the study did, right? They saw this crazy movie and then they looked at nature scenes for 19 minutes and it changed the rest of their day.
Wow. Yeah, create a screensaver. Like for me right now, what's coming up for me is creating some type of screensaver either on my computer or even on my TV to kind of do like a side scrolling of some kind of nature, just having it around. And that's really cool. And it's practical. And it's something, again, that everyone has. It's practical.
It is. It's incredibly practical. I mean, and the other thing that I would mention too is that, when you're reading about rewilding and kind of this nature immersion and, forest bathing and all this stuff, we have a tendency to talk a lot about the trees and plant life and all this stuff. And I would say don't get caught up on the green space, because you could be in the middle of Arizona's painted desert and you're still going to have the same response, right? Seeing the Grand Canyon, if you don't have to be in a forest, being in the Great Plains in the springtime and seeing the wildflowers, or experiencing, seeing, wild bison kind of cresting a hill, same wonderful experience. So don't get caught up on the idea of like, oh, I can step outside my front door and see the plains, but I don't have any trees. It's okay. You don't need a tree. You don't need a tree. Just look up and marvel at the blue sky or the clouds. What we want is that again, that tingle up the spine, that sense of wonder and awe.
Why do I feel like a kid again as you say these things?
Because we should. Children have the most amazing and beautiful connection with nature. Children are kind of born with this, I don't know, kind of an animistic mindset. So when you're a child, it's easy to think of plants and trees and rocks and rivers as having personalities and emotions. And so it's easy to relate to them, to connect to them. And, once you get into a public school system, that gets wiped out real fast. So it's something where I think that's why for me, when I think of my wild self, that little kid, with a face that's dirty and hands that are dirty and just sitting in a tree, that's because that's what it is. That's, you know what I mean? And I think that I don't know that you can be outside, that you can connect with nature and think about belonging to the same family as all other marvels without feeling like a child.
Wow, Robert. So I got to ask you, for anyone who is looking to have a feeling experience of this rewilding, looking to have a feeling experience of empowerment, feeling experience of nature as it exists, but can be accessible within their own home, their office place, their room. Two parts. How can they have that experience with you or contact you? And also, what is next for you? This sounds, Robert, and I'm not just saying this, but it sounds like you're building an empire. It really does.
I don't know. I mean, maybe if that's in the cards.
Are you bringing people out? Are you gonna? Maybe I'm asking too much. But are you gonna be doing retreats?
No. Right? This is part of the plan. So I'll explain this from the start. So I created a website called rhnaturereconnect.com, Robert Hensley Nature Reconnect.com. And on this website, I wanted it to be a resource. And so I recently wrote an ebook called Rekindling Your Relationship with Nature. And I was playing with the title. I wanted it to sound like one of those cheesy romance self-help books from the 90s. Because it is that kind of intimate relationship that we should have with the natural world, right? It should be familial and feel comfortable and be just full of love and light. And the goal of the ebook was to create a system where literally in 15 minutes per day, you can start this rewilding journey, whether you're inside or out, right? So it gives you the tools. There are exercises and meditations and things to think about and tips and tricks and all kinds of stuff. It's available on the website. I think it's $12. It's not going to break the bank. And again, it's something that you kind of read and take in, and you practice it 15 minutes a day on your own terms. You choose whatever exercise speaks to you most, or you switch it up. And then, as I said, there's, if you've never really gone into a meditation practice or felt like you were successful at a meditation practice, I've created a digital course. It's a kind of 8 short video modules, and it's called The Basics of Meditation. And it was designed to give people confidence in starting a meditation practice. So it's 90 minutes worth of it's like a 90-minute class, just kind of broken down into sections. There's a handout and some really fun bonus stuff. And that's $35. I created a maxi pack, which is the class plus even more extras. It includes the book, the ebook, and that's $50. And launching tomorrow on my birthday is my Meet Your Wild Self 5-day challenge. And so if anyone's been following me on social media, they know that I've spent months kvetching, more than kvetching, I've been bitching about the difficulty of putting together a challenge. Has been like just kind of coming up with curriculum and testing out all of the daily exercises or the daily challenges and making sure that you really kind of got to where you needed to get to in 5 days. So that is it's a workbook. It's $10. If you go to my website, you'll see it. It's got this really cute cover with kind of a guy and a girl looking into the sun. But it's a workbook with 5 exercises for 5 days, and it also has support with a private Facebook group, so that you can contact me and we can talk and support each other. And so if you have things to share or you need information or something didn't feel right, we can communicate and we can kind of be there together. So there's that. Of course, I do personal coachings digitally, or if we happen to be in the same city, because I bounce around a lot. And on top of that, I have partnered with Om Body Massage and Wellness in Pennsylvania. It's near my hometown. It's in the Laurel Highlands of Pennsylvania. In fact, I grew up in a town called Ohiopyle, and yesterday they were named the best small town in the Northeast by USA Today. So it's a great place to be. But we have a lot of really beautiful nature there. I couldn't imagine another place to kind of start an initiative with a wellness center. And so in May, we're starting to do weekly forest bathing. And if you're not familiar with forest bathing is a Japanese concept. It's a really pretty way of saying walking in the woods. But you're walking in the woods and you're focusing on your breathing and you're focusing on mindfulness. And it really teaches you to just be present in the place where you are. Right. And so we've got some beautiful nature trails, and Leanne Beatty, who is the owner of Own Body Massage and Wellness, she's going to be leading those walks. And when I'm in town, I'll be popping in and out to do some stuff there as well. And we plan on starting some retreat stuff this year. So we are going to be taking people outside, and we are going to be, getting people out into nature and meditating and doing yoga and practicing mindfulness and just really helping people reconnect. That's the goal.
Robert, you are a wealth of information and a wealth of just, I just want to say thank you for empowering us all today. So many ways to connect with you, so many services. And also, I want to also end with this. Happy early birthday to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Grateful you were born. And
I'm grateful I was born too.
What are you doing for your birthday tomorrow?
Nothing. Yesterday I had kind of a free day. So a friend and I, we took the aerial tram from Palm Springs up to the top of Mount San Jacinto, and we hiked around for about 4 or 5 hours. So I spent the entire day in nature, taking in the sights and the sounds and just breathing the nice cold mountain air. And it was a balm. It was fantastic. So that was my birthday gift to myself.
Well, you are a gift to us, to me, Robert, and thank you for bringing some of that nature energy back to us, reminding us that we can access this in so many ways to do it. I am so excited for that launch of that retreat. You've got so much going on, and also excited for NatureReconnect.com as a way of everyone to be able to get a hold of you, to get contact with you, get your book, the courses. It's all there. So for anyone who is ready, and even if you're not, this will give you the confidence to be ready.
Yep. Take the risk. Take the risk. It's well worth it.
Hey,
well worth it.
What else is there to say? Take the risk. It's well worth it, everyone. Take a risk and bet on yourself. That's it. Thank you, my friend. Happy birthday.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much.